you want to start off with a question from myself or from the fan page? Okay,
I've got a...
Right then. So the first one that I've wrote down in the prep that I've done is regards your retirement. So feel free, if I've got anything wrong and I'm talking absolute gibberish, just shout up and let me know. So according to my research, you began working for the courts in 1980?
Correct, yeah. 5th of August, yeah.
Right, okay. And when you began you began under administration worker, is that correct?
Started as an admin clerk, yeah, worked my way up.
So you went on as a clerk, and would you like to talk about your career and basically how does it feel now to be a man of leisure?
Well, I just worked in the court. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it's a fishing podcast, but yeah, it swings and roundabouts. You know, all my mates were, you know, skiving days off work to go fishing, hanging on. You know, there's a lot of builders who could take a few days off. You know, it swings and roundabouts. Being self-employed, yeah, it's got its good points and bad points. But, you know, I had to be at work for 9 o'clock. I wasn't going to leave till 5. You know, I couldn't go straight to work from the lake. So, you know, it had its good points and its bad points. But once you get near the finishing line, it's just good points after good points. So I started when I was 17 and finished when I was 55. So 38 years. And I'll be honest, it was when I retired, I was really sad, you know, because that's all I knew, you know. And when I walked out of there, I shed a tear, or I shed more than a tear, I shed a lot of tears. I gave myself a list of jobs to do, and I thought, well, what's going to happen when that list of jobs is done? And then then after about 3 weeks, a few more jobs appeared, and it's not better, it's just different. You know, I was one of the few people who loved his job. So when I retired, I still miss my colleagues. I still keep in touch with them. It's just a different way of loving life. That's all it is. Yeah. So yeah, I love the fact I've got more time to go fishing, but I don't do a huge amount more fishing. I just do it more at sensible times. So, you know, when I was doing 3 or 4 overnighters a week, when they were getting caught 6 to 10 o'clock in the morning, I might as well have done one overnighter and stuck it out till 10 in the morning. So I possibly even fish less hours, but better hours.
Yeah, it's as you say, like, I mean, anybody that's read any of your articles in what Crafty Carp or when it was about in Carp World, etc., you were the king. Well, I've always said it. You're the king of the overnighters, and that was basically you had no choice if you wanted to do as much fishing as you wanted, due to trying to obviously your working life, you know, get work around it. Whereas what you're probably saying to me now is, yeah, I'm retired and I can pick and choose to go when I want at hopefully the right times, because you know as well as I do, there's certain waters that produce better at a certain time of the year, certain time of the day, conditions, etc. So
I've not become a better angler overnight, but I've caught probably 5 times, maybe 10 times more carp at times, just because I picked the right water for the right conditions. I know if I could go fishing today, where I could go and catch one, and I know where I would go and struggle. So it's just a matter of, you know, picking your time. So, and to be fair, the more you go, the better you get. There's no argument against that. We're a natural crap. I'm a crap.
Pop me lead in and put some juice in me battery because we're going to die. Just apologies. There we go.
I'm not a great and no matter how much time I had to play cricket, I would never be a great cricketer. But if you've got any sort of idea, the more you go, the better you get. And people say it's it may be a sixth sense in a appreciate sort of way, but quite frankly, the more you go, the better it is.
Right.
The easier it is.
Fantastic. Right, I'm going to throw a question in now, which we've had sent in. This one came actually on my page on Facebook. And this question actually made me laugh, so it might do the same for you. But this is from someone called Roger Ray.
Yeah, I know Roger Ray fishes a place. I fished Sugar Mills. Yeah, right. He's not too far away from it yet.
To be honest, when I saw the name, I thought that rings a bit of a bell, but now I know why. But Roger asked me a question to ask yourself: is if carp could talk, what questions would you like answered?
If carp could talk?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not copying out of this, the thing that excites me about carp fishing is you never know it all. And I'm not anti-technology. I'm anti-technology of a certain level for my fishing. So the thing that keeps me excited about carp fishing is that I don't know it all, and it's always just a step away from me getting it right. I always try and give this as a scenario. If there was a field, well, there's a massive field next to me with sheep in it. Those sheep are so easy to kill. But if you fill that field full of straw or hay or grass and I couldn't see them, it makes it a lot harder to find where they are. And the thing about carp fishing is that it's difficult. You know, no matter how, they're always one step ahead of us. And I don't want to know what carp are thinking. I love the Corda DVDs, but if you spend too much time watching them, it did your head in. So for me, the fact is that I don't know what they're doing is what makes it exciting. And the thing is, when we catch lots of carp, we always come up with a reason. So we come up with an answer that we caught one, and then we come up with the equation to why we caught one. It works the other way around. So when you don't catch one, you always go, well, my rig's blown, or I was in the wrong spot, or the conditions were wrong. And actually, the difference could be that that carp sucked at your bait, didn't go in the mouth, and that was it. And if you caught that fish, you'd have come up. So that I'm not copping out of this. I actually like the fact that I don't know what question I would ask them, and I still want to be baffled by it, because as soon as I think that I've done it, I'll do something else.
Yeah,
it always puzzles me.
I can totally, I can get just what you know, 100% what you're saying. But I looked at the question and I thought,
yeah,
is it a wind up or is it just a genuine question? And I looked at it again and I thought, nah, that's a good question. I thought Jules would like that. So nice one, Roger. Right, I'm going to go back to my questions. We've got a few more to come back to on the fan page as we go on. The next one that I'm going to...
People asking them online, so...
Oh,
you know.
The whizzing past, mate, and it's a nightmare. So if I can get to those, I'll try and pick one or two, but I think I'll just stick to the format that I've got. Right, then, next question I'm going to talk about is the written word. Now, throughout the years I've known you, I've learned how much a fan you are of the written word. And with the internet such an impact these days and the current coronavirus pandemic not helping matters, do you fear for magazines, fear for magazines basically and publishers?
I do. I absolutely. I mean, I'll just turn this round slightly, if that shows. I mean, I absolutely adore the written word, and I always have done. Probably because I was absolutely crap at school at everything else. I was no good at anything other than. Sorry about that, guys. that will teach me not to mess with a phone that you've set up. That's better. I was absolutely crap at school at anything bar English. And the first teacher that showed any interest in me was my English teacher. My mum was a writer, and that's where it developed from, and obviously Tim Paisley. I love the written word, and I love the printed word more than I love the written word. I use my computer, my phone, things like that for research. But, the magazines like Carpology, Total Carp, Carp Feed, all those, there's something about the reading that I love. There is going to be a problem with magazines. Magazines rely on people to purchase them, and it rely on people to advertise in them. And if people don't advertise and people don't purchase, it becomes very difficult. It's a carp fishing business, and I do fear for it. I mean, Carpology is an incredible magazine, absolutely incredible. Joseph,
absolutely fantastic.
And I don't take this the wrong way. Joseph was a little lad who used to write to me, did a little fanzine, and I've still got his letters and his things he produced. And what he does is incredible. Same with Total Carp. People not Total Carp who've never read it. It's an incredible magazine. There's something for everybody in carp feed. But I do fear for it because if people don't buy it and don't advertise, the people that control it will say there's no money in it. So I do fear for it. I'm hoping that we will be allowed out to buy magazines, but it's going to be difficult. Certainly for the weeklies, very difficult for the weeklies. They rely on a regular footfall to buy them. You know, I'm hoping not. You know, I do my best to publicise them, but yeah, I do fear.
Well, I pretty much thought that was going to be your answer, and yeah, I've heard it now from the man himself. And I was really, really upset when I heard the rumours about Carp World, and when it actually, I think it was you that actually broke it and confirmed it. And I was like, I mean, I'll hold my hand up. I've got a family that live in Scotland, and obviously not recently, but I do try and get there 2 or 3 times a year, and I fly there because it's a damn sight quicker than driving. And that is my little treat. I always tend to read half of it there because it's only an hour journey, and then I read the other. So I can tend to like read the magazine during the flight to Scotland and the flight back. And when I heard that, I thought, I mean, that's just a legendary publication which I've bought. No doubt you have.
Yeah.
And I was never gutted.
Timeline is everything. You can't make people. You know, it's like designing the best marker float in the world. It's not going to compete with a deeper. And you know, if you're a new age carper who's somewhere between the age of 13 and 18, you aren't going to want to buy magazines. Maybe until you're older and it's too late. So I don't criticise anybody who doesn't buy magazines. The same as people, you know, the world has moved on. You know, life. You know, I'm lucky. I think I have the best of it. But you know, I'm sure if I was 17 now, I'd think, well, why on earth? You know, what on earth? The point of collecting all that stuff that collects does. It's horses for courses.
Great answer, Jules. Right then, I think that was question number 4. Right then, yeah. Whilst we're still on the theme of publications, I'm going to talk about books now. And you've written 6 books, and I'm going to name them for the people who are watching this this live video. So, Practical Carp Fishing, Carp Waters, Successful Carp Fishing, the BK Guide to Carp Rigs, and the Guide to Starting Carp Fishing, and my absolute favourite, which I've got my copy here, and it's a hardback copy, Jules. That's yeah. I should have white gloves on with this.
Yeah.
That's about that. My favourite. Do you have any plans for a 7th?
Yeah, I always wanted to write an autobiography based around carp fishing and life, because with writing about carp fishing, it becomes very formatic. It becomes how to catch them. You find something that I wouldn't say you're good at, but something that resonates with the readers, and you write it. And it's only with the advent of social media that people actually see who the person is behind the writing. And so my autobiography will be based around carp fishing, but it will be my life, the ups and downs, the disasters, because, you know, my life is no different to anybody. You know, I have been through the same times, tough times that all you have been through. But I choose not to write about negative stuff. And that's not a criticism of anybody. I tend to just write about the positive stuff. I don't want to read about the negative stuff all the time. And when, you know, and that's me. But when I write my autobiography, you'll look at that and think, oh my God, did that happen in 1996? Or did that happen in 1984? There are times, you know, when I have been at rock bottom, and there have been times when I've made myself go carp fishing, not because I didn't want to go carp fishing, but I knew I needed to do it to not fall off the treadmill, because when you stop something, it becomes very hard to do it again. And I love my carp fishing, but yeah, my autobiography, I'm up to about probably 140,000 words now. It'll be purely, yeah, it'll be a vanity.
You've already started.
Oh no, I've done it probably for 4 years now. Just fine tune. It'll be what we call a vanity project. It'll be, as long as it covers the cost of printing it, it'll be something I self-publish myself, and it's for me. It'll be a coffee table type book. It'll be a big book. It'll be, and people read it and they'll go, I never knew that. There'll be something for everybody.
Oh, fantastic! I didn't know that you'd obviously got the wheels in motion. So that's a bit of breaking news then to people watching this feed. Yeah. So that's something that I'll surely buy a copy of. Right then, family, and your dad's a bit of a celebrity.
Yeah, my dad. Yeah, he's. I always say to people that any good in me, whatever that is, comes from mum and dad. You know, and when you're a kid growing up, I wouldn't say take them for granted, but my mum and dad made me. So, you know, my dad was taking me to concerts when I was 13, and I'd say Kiss are playing at Manchester, Dad, in 1976, and he would buy the tickets for me. And then this is probably before the M62. I don't remember. Would run us after school to Manchester, and there weren't car parks and McDonald's in those days. He would sit in the car with a flask of coffee, listening to the radio, while I went to the concert either on my own or with my mates, and then he would keep driving past. There were no mobile phones then. He would drive past until he saw me. He would then drive me home, and it would be, what, 2:30, 3 in the morning. Of course, either I was at school or it was a weekend. You had to go to work. And I sort of took it for granted. Not in a bad way, but I took it for granted.
Yeah,
he took me fishing to the car. And as you get old, you think, geez, God, what did my dad do for me? And no matter what I ever do for my dad, it'll never be enough to repay him. So my dad I am my dad.
Yeah.
Good or bad, I'm my dad. So anybody who thinks I've ever helped him, it's my mum and my dad. So yeah, my dad is a star. He's great. I can't see him now, obviously, because of his age and things like that. But you know, we Skype each other and things like that. So I'm happy with that.
I mean, that's another thing. Before we move on, still talking about your dad. I mean, it's unbearable, in my opinion, to think of, if in this situation. Imagine if we got none of what we got now, like Skype or FaceTime or Zoom. I mean, you know. That's another thing that I've really appreciated more, going back to talking about my countryside walks. I mean, I've got family in Cheshire, I've got family in Scotland, and I've been video messaging them every other day just to see how they are, and I'd be lost about it, and no doubt you would.
My mum told me years ago, never put anything on, ever. Never, ever put anything off. And I always think that if my dad died tomorrow, and he won't, God forbid he does, there's nothing else we as a couple could ever have done together.
Yeah.
So I'm one of these people that, I'll do it tomorrow. So whether it's fishing, whether it's relationships, whether it's writing, whether it's my dad, I never, ever generally put stuff off. You know, because so many people say to me, oh, if only I'd, there's no point me going to the graveside and putting it out when I could have spent time. There's no point me going to water and saying, you know what, if I'd only fished this when I had the opportunity to. And as you get older, the trick is to realise that it doesn't get easier, it just gets later, or it doesn't happen at all. So yeah, I'm so lucky with my relationship with my parents, my mum, my dad, my sister. I'm so lucky.
Am I right in saying, Jules, that your dad has never had any interest at all in angling?
Not at all. Not at all. He thinks it's as daft as I think cricket is boring. My dad, whatever my interest was, my dad always supported me. And he's never, ever been fishing with me. That he's only probably ever seen me once actually catch a carp live. And he would simply, but I would bring him up at 6:30 in the morning, and he would come down and do the photos for me if I was on my own before I could self-time it.
Yeah.
My enjoyment out of my fishing was seeing the joy in my dad's face. My dad probably thought I was bonkers, but the fact that his son liked it is the same as me watching my dad watching cricket. I'm thinking, this is so boring. It makes my dad happy, so I'm happy.
That's a great way of looking at things. Well, if you do manage to Skype him next time, pass my regards to him, because I think he's absolutely, he's just like his son. Fantastic.
My dad's is really funny because he's a certain age, and when I started going out with Roz, I obviously took him round to introduce him and all that. And my dad always likes the company of women, so my dad always gets on well with women. And so when he's talking to Roz for the first time, I'm saying, Dad, does this, that, and the other, and Dad goes, oh yes, I have lots of girlfriends, just like Julian. I'm thinking, no. You don't mean it that way, Dad. I know what you mean, but yeah, he's a star, my dad.
Fabulous, absolutely brilliant. I'm going to go back to a question now. This is from somebody called Dave Parking Coates, and this was sent in on the fan pages. Dave, I presume this was just before the lockdown. He's just purchased some new rods, some Grays rods, and they're £3 test curve. Now, Dave wants to compliment it with some bait runners, Shimano. In your opinion, what size would you use on the rods, either 6 or 10,000?
It all depends on the range you're fishing. Fishing tackle, it's balance. So you could have a lovely 10-foot scope rod and an SS3000, and it would not work properly. And it all depends on the distance you're fishing. If you are going to be fishing long range, the bigger the reel, the better. And I would say always get the biggest reel or the best reel you can afford. And they're massive in difference. So to me, it would be the bigger reel. Unless he is only fishing small waters, and he wouldn't buy a £3, probably 12-foot rod anyway. I'd go for the bigger reel, because you can always buy other reels that are smaller, that are cheaper. But a bigger reel, you'll not get a small reel cast as even long distance as you can fish short distance with a bigger reel. So I'd always get them.
I had to hold back myself, not answering the question for you, working for Angling Direct, because I'm just so used to doing. The amount of times that I get asked that question, when you put the 6,000 and the 10,000 together, and I ask the question to the customer, can you tell me the difference between those two reels? And most of the people say, yeah, the price is about £2. And I said, no. The biggest difference is they're actually the same scale reels. The only difference is the spool size. And when you point that out, which is that obvious, they go,
the bigger spool.
And if I don't know whether this guy just fishes in the UK, but if he was going to France, his better investment, and I'm sure you'd agree, would be the bigger spool.
Yeah, the bigger spool reel can hold, heavier line to cast longer distances. Use 15 or 20-pound line all the time, and obviously that's for the bigger spool reel will cast it further. It's simple. It's a simple equation. The biggest you can afford. If he was telling me he got an 8-foot or a 9-foot rod, then he's So the better reel.
Fantastic. Right then, one of my questions, and I'm going to talk about sponsorship now. So you've been associated with a few companies over the years, Fox International and Nutribaits, to name a few. But your relationship with Nash Tackle seems to go on forever, Jules. It must be one of the longest in carp fishing. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's really funny because, again, people poo-poo sponsorship. Yeah, if you go back, you can go back to Hutch's era, people like that. There was sponsorship, happening in those days. My original, the first time I ever got any product assistance or sponsorship would be the mid-80s with Nutribaits, when Nutribaits were on the scene. And I got a bit of discount off the Adit range. And I've still, this is going in my autobiography, I've got the original black and white typed out price range for Adit. And there's a letter which Bill says, we can't give you for free, but we can give you a bit of discount. And that was before Nutribaits brought out high no-val and things like that. So the first product assistance I got was from Nutribaits. And so I'd started carp fishing in probably about 84 series. So it would be probably 86 before I started getting any assistance from Nutribaits. I caught the big fish from the motorway pond, and I got a letter out of the blue, a letter from Kevin Nash, and it was a handwritten letter, again in the autobiography, saying, I've been very impressed with what you've done. I noticed that you use Nash Tackle, which I did generally, a lot of Nash Tackle. Would you be interested in joining Carp Team Diowa, which, of course, in those days, Kevin Nash was head of. Nash didn't have rods, reels, and alarms, and Kevin headed up Carp Team Diowa. I got AKM rods, SS3000s, and I remember him saying quite clearly to me, there's good news and bad news. Is you're getting the rods, you're getting the reels, but you're also getting the Sensitrons, and you have to use them. The Sensitrons looked great. They were ahead of the time, but they weren't waterproof. So that product assistance from Kevin was a full sponsorship from Diowa, which was brilliant. And then eventually Kevin obviously started developing his own rod and things like that. And I became the head of Carp Team Diowa. So that would be the first time I ever got free fishing tackle, would be the probably early 90s from Diowa, which led on to you know, in those days, I was using Nutribait's bait, I was using bits of Nash tackle. Most things I got for free. That was the product assistance. I then started writing for Angling Times in 1994, and part of the deal in those days was it was a Fox. There was a Fox product, and I became a Fox consultant. Although I never fell out with Kevin Nash, and we always stayed good friends, and he understood that. He understood he would always say, "Come to Nash bait," but he understood my loyalty to Nutribaits, and I stayed with Nutribaits. And it got to the end of the 90s, and of course, I stopped writing for Angling Times at the end of the 90s, and it gave me a chance to go back with Nashy, who would stay friends. I'd never slagged them off and said, well, Fox is better than Nash, or Nash is better than Fox, and all that kind of crap. And generally, if you just think long term, so I've been with Kevin Nash since 1989, one way or another, and fully with him since 2012 for literally everything. So we're mates. I've been to his weddings, been to see my girlfriends. He tells me how it is. I tell him how it is, and I would say that we're friends. You know, we're not friends in each other's pockets, but I value what he has given to carp fishing. He values what maybe I've done for carp fishing. So that's where it goes back to.
It's I was going to say something. That was it. The Sensitron. Going back to you talking about it non-waterproof, I think it was Clean River Productions. Gary Bays and Kevin went to it was called Canary Carping.
That's right, yeah.
Really old video. And the reason this is a vivid memory of mine. My first ever job in the angling trade was for a fishing tackle shop not far from my doorstep, and we used to actually have a little glass section in our shop with, believe it or not, videos. And every night we'd take one home and watch one. But I distinctly remember, I've tried to get a copy of it, but it's vanished off the face of the earth. But the Sensitron, I'm sure Nashy took 3 sets of those with him on that trip, because one minute it was glorious sunshine, and then you'd have a vicious storm. And he said once the storm had been, that was it. They'd gone. And he had to take 3 sets to get through the.
They were still ahead of the time. In fact, here we go.
A working Sensitron appearing.
Yay!
Wow. Look at that. That's fabulous. That brings back memories. But yeah, that's great. That is absolutely brilliant. I'm going to go back to another question from the fan page now, if I can find it. Actually, this one came through on Twitter during the week. You might follow this guy, or he might follow you. Casual Carper.
Yeah.
Good question, this one. Jules, how would you approach a completely unfished water? It's a couple of acres in size. It's a spring-fed lake, weedy and very, very clear. And it's the bottom of a farmer's field, and there's literally no footfall around it. And I think a little path gets mowed twice a year, but it sounds like it's very difficult to access and get round the lake. Any thoughts?
Funny enough, we've got a pond in our village which has never. There's 2. There's one that's never been fished. These fish have never seen bait, and obviously we're known in the village. We're friendly with people, and he said, "Yeah, you walk past, you throw a few surface baits on the pond, and they come for them." So whenever there is a lake that's smallish, which that clearly is, to me it's always surface baits. It would be surface baits with the mixers, the risers, or whatever, and then it would be a bread bomb. It would be a bread bomb. No carp can resist. Resist bread. And the thing about a bread bomb as well is, if it's weedy, you can fish straight through 20-pound line with a bread bomb. It's not like normal floater fishing where you're using, 8-pound line, a size 12 hook, balancing your mixer out. The thing with the bread bomb is, although it is surface fishing, it's not what I call floater fishing. It's surface fishing. And with a bread bomb, you are in effect stalking them off the top. So I would use the mixers to find out how many fish there are, where they are, and then I would simply underarm a bread bomb with a piece of bread on for those carp. That's what I wouldn't be bothering about sweet corn and particles and boilies. I just literally walk around with one rod, mixers and a bread bomb.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because there was a comment that popped up in between the question asked, and I think you were tagged in it on Twitter. So, I mean, the one guy said, pre-baiting surely has got to be the option. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, he's got a point there, but yeah, that's I'll let him know the answer if I can't send him this link. But great answer. Right, inspirations. Me personally, I'm talking about Nashy again here. I look at Kevin Nash as one of my carp fishing inspirations. Do you want to talk about Nashy again then, as an inspiration maybe?
My inspirations were carp fishing wise. It's really weird because I was a specialist angler, and the water I was fishing, which is a pond called Drax Pond, I just fished for tench. And I turned up one year, and all of a sudden there was these guys sat behind 2 or 3 matching rods with buzzers, and I knew what they were, but I thought, wow. And it was really weird. They were fishing like Kevin Maddox, the neat rods and reels, the cardinals, the bed chairs, and yet they were reading Rod Hutchinson, The Carp Strikes Back. And I remember I was one of these, although I wasn't a kid, I'd be 21, I was a nuisance kid to them. They were a bit older than me. And this kid said, just, bugger off and read this book. And it was The Carp Strikes Back. And I read that book, and that was it. That he was although Rod inspired me to go carp fishing, it was Kevin Maddox who taught me to go carp fishing. So I then picked up Carp Fever, which actually, I was about to say I stole from the school library. I permanently borrowed it. Just a second.
Hang on a minute, I want to stop you there. Your school had a copy of Carp Fever in its library.
Yeah, my school had a copy of Carp Fever. That's signed by the great man himself. And I permanently borrowed it. I probably owe about 500 quid on it. And I read that. Rod's book inspired me to go carp fishing, but it didn't really, because I'm a very methodical person. And I picked up Kevin Maddox's book, and it was like A, B, C equals D, E, F, G. And those two were my early inspirations. The love of the game that Rod had, and the methodical approach that Kevin Maddox had. And then the third person was Andy Little. And he was I say the best of both. He was like the best of both to me. And I fished with him. And then, of course, Nashy came on, and all the other people, Ian Booker, and the way he baited, Tim. I've got so many people that have inspired me, but my icons, my fishing icons, and people take the piss out of people who are described as legends. Well, it's a carp fishing legend. It's not a human being legend.
No.
To me, a legendary carp angler. Let's call him a legendary carp angler. The Maddox, Hutchinson, Little, Richie McDonald's. People can inspire me to go carp fishing, who I'm nothing like. I am nothing like Richie McDonald, Rod Hutchinson, that kind of, but they inspired me to go carp fishing, and Kevin Nash. So yeah, I'm lucky I blended all those into my carp fishing, but they were my icons, legends or what.
Do you keep in touch with Kevin Maddox at all still? Because I mean,
I've not been in touch with him for a while, but yeah, I mean, I wrote a book with him. We did videos together. He was an inspiration. But, Kevin did carp fishing, and then one day realised that there was more to life than carp fishing. But his contribution was ginormous. He may not have invented the hair rig on its own. And it gets so boring when people say, I invented this first and I invented that first and all that. Kevin Maddox was, in effect, really the first person to do a step-by-step guide to carp fishing in the 80s, which is why I did carp fishing, practical carp fishing in the 90s, sort of a more 90s version of it. But yeah, I have a lot of time for Kevin, and Kevin was, to spend time at his house. He was my icon. It was like David Beckham inviting me to his house.
Was that with your Paul, Jules?
Yeah, with the pool. I stayed at his house. We did interviews about his early carp fishing career. We wrote the book together. I rewrote the bait chapter in Carp Fever. Now, it's almost like, for carp anglers, that's the Bible. And your icon, who you dreamed of meeting one day, says, oh, can you update my bait chapter in Carp Fever? It's like, wow.
Yeah. That's fantastic. But because I mean, yeah, I think didn't things start to deteriorate? Didn't he? I mean, I don't want to talk too personally about it, but didn't he separate from his wife and then?
Yeah, separated from Brenda. BK, Brenda and Kevin was BK. Kevin kept the business. Brenda kept the fishery. Such is life. Yeah.
Am I right in saying that Kevin owns a fishery in France, or is that just something?
He did own, yeah, but that's all gone now. You know, he had the various fishes. You know, but yeah. It's all in my book. It's all in the book.
Well, yeah, I don't want to indulge too, and you give too much away. I mean, obviously you've got to try and sell it.
No, I couldn't give a toss who buys it. It's one of those things I'm going to buy, I'm going to do, and I'm going to look and say, you know, that it's for me as much as anybody else.
Okie dokie, fantastic. Right, I'm going to talk about rigs now, Jules, because I know you like talking about rigs. And I think you know which one I'm going to ask about, which I've videoed with you numerous times and taught you at the Northern Acting Show and Carping On and all the rest of it. But the multi-rig, which firstly we have to thank Mr. Kavanagh for, or should I call it the tubed multi-rig? Now, how much of a difference do you think that the shrink tubing makes, Jules?
Well, the thing is, again, if we go back to one of those early questions you asked me, we come up with an answer and then we come up with the question to fit the answer.
Yeah.
All I would say is that when I originally used the multi-rig, as Mike showed it with me, and it was fine, it worked great. And bit by bit, I just, you know, fine-tuned it. And, you know, from the original multi-rig, which Mike showed me and I've written about a few times, I found that I got more takes or more action by overshotting it. I got more takes with a sharper nut by angling the bit of shrink tube at 45 degrees, the tubing. I got more takes. Now, I can't scientifically give you an answer, and nobody can. And we can give you all sorts of bull, but I know that all these little bits seem to catch me more carp. You can't say I would have caught 92, I've caught 400. All I can say is that whenever I've used it, I've never felt that it's cost me fish. And the more I've fine-tuned it with various components, I've got more and more successful. And, you know, it works for me. That hook point off the bottom of the lake, that is eternally fishing until you wind it in. And that, you know, if you watch the Corda DVDs, it wasn't that the carp weren't sampling the hook bait. It's that when the carp sampled the hook bait and the hook, they were getting rid of it. And if you watch carp move on the bottom, the amount of movement they create, you know, balanced pop-ups are all over the place. If you have a super sharp hook, you anchor it with an overshotted weight, you put it out of the way of other things. To me, that's it's angles that confuse the carp. People, there is no answer, because if you got the 20 most successful carp anglers or well-known carp anglers, they'd all be on different rigs. And if there was a best rig, we'd all be on the same one. It's like Formula One. If you said to the 20 drivers, what car and setup do you want? In all likelihood, they pick one. But with carp fishing, we all use different. I look at some of carp anglers' rigs and think, wow, you must be a good carp angler, because I do not know how that works. And I'm sure they must think the same thing of me. It's confidence. The more you catch on it, the more confident you are. And I've never heard anybody tell me that when they've copied the multi-rig as I tie it up, they've caught less carp. But they need to tie it up as I tie it. The only time I get people saying it doesn't work for me, I say, did you copy it as I said? And then they say, oh, well, no, I couldn't get that hook, I couldn't get that tube, and I couldn't get that braid. I decided to use a 20mm pop-up. And I think, no. It's the little percentages. When I fished with Andy Little, he taught me that. I went fishing with Andy Little, and he would catch 20 carp, and I would catch 7. And I looked and thought, he's doing 6, 7, 8, 9 things slightly better than I am. His hooks were sharper or smaller. His braid was thinner. His main line was finer. His rods were pointed at, and I knew it wasn't luck. And when I watched what he did, I realised that all these little bits added up. So I was fishing at 70% and he was fishing at 90%. And over the course of a day or a week or a month, that adds up. So to me, the tube multi-rig is, well, it catches me a lot of carp. And when it stops doing it, I'll use something else.
Yeah, I've discussed this at work numerous times, because a lot of people do go to our tied rig section. Now we've got the Nash ones, but the majority of the time they go on the Corda ones. And yeah, I'll get asked, what do you use? And a lot of people look at me alien when I tell them that I don't use, like, the Ronnie rig. How many you caught on the Ronnie rig? Mate, I don't use it. What? You don't use it? It's the latest rig. No, I don't use it, mate, because what I use at the moment hasn't broken, so I don't fix it. And then, yeah, it's been a good selling point for me, because I've talked about the tube multi-rig, and guys have gone, well, where'd you go from there? And I say, I'll do a deal with you. You buy a packet of hooks, you buy some shrink tube, you buy some swivels, you buy some etc. I'll tie one up, but once I've tied it, you've got to buy from. And but once I've done it, and I've showed them, and I've, God, that's simple.
Yeah, I think the thing with the Ronnie rig and things like that, if 90% of people are using it on the lake, almost certainly most of the carp are going to get caught on it. And the thing, more metal work. These rigs work great when they're sat on your hand, but once you put metal work into silt and weed and muck on the bottom, it does not behave the same. Metal does not spin as uncoated braid does. But it's horses for courses. I'm happy for people to keep using Ronnie rigs all the time. And once I see myself being outfished by somebody on a Ronnie rig, straight on it. I'm not there to prove a point. I'm there to catch carp.
And just before we finish off this subject, another thing that I'd like to point on is, people read about this in a magazine, but the ones that are still currently producing written content, the carp always comes in from that direction, and on the next issue it's on that. And carp don't always come in real life from that direction, do they, Jules?
There's probably 359 other degrees it could come in from, but it's whatever people are confident in.
Yeah, fantastic. We'll move on then. So we talked about rigs. Waters. Now, I know that you're a member of a few different waters in your local area. What do you go on when making the decision on which one of them to fish on the day of the session? So if you say...
Experience.
Sorry?
It's experience. It's just experience, to be honest. I know which waters will fish off the top in certain conditions. There are some waters that the hotter, the better. When it's red hot, for some reason, those waters fish better. When it's raining, I'll go to a different water. It is just experience. And that's the one thing that Nash, Corda, Gardner, Fox can't sell. You cannot buy experience. And the more you go, the more experience. So if I went to a water for the first time, I'd never fished in my life before, I'm not going to have the same advantages as somebody who fishes it regularly. But I'm going to have more advantages over somebody who's only been fishing 2 years. So you've got swings and roundabouts. The more you fish, the easier it is to look at the water and say, that's just like A, B, C, D, E, F that I've fished before, and you don't make as many mistakes. So the more water, so somebody like Simon Crowe fishes lots and lots of different waters. He must turn up at waters and say, oh, that's just like 1, 7, 22 and 47 I've fished. So it's just experience, which you can't buy. But until you fish regularly and catch regularly, you can't build up experience. So my advice to everybody is pick 1 or 2 waters and fish them till your nose bleeds, until you know how to rinse those waters, and then go to somewhere else. But you learn carp fishing by catching carp, not by blanking.